Welcome back to another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Alongside me, as always, it's Wayne Spooney. Spooney, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. I checked my email this morning, and apparently during the playback last night, I ordered an old-timey private investigator outfit. So that should be here tomorrow. So awesome. I'm not sure. Yeah. So the Dick Magnum it's getting written, and I guess I'll debut that when we make the finals.
That is like the one thing in this world that might excite me more than an actual title for the Celtics. So we'll unpack that a little bit later. But in the meantime, our favorite guest is back with us tonight. We are forever connected in our mutual suffering through everything the Celtics do. Our mutual suffering through everything the Celtics do until they win this ring. From Barstool Sports, it's Dan Greenberg. Greenie, how's it going, man?
Good, man. I was backstage. I was like, "Oh, did they kick me out already? I haven't even given a hot take yet. This is nuts."
Oh, welcome in. Well, I mean, maybe we can start with a hot take on this moment. So before we get to Game 2 and like how the series might shift and how Indiana might react to our strategies in Game 2, I got to ask you about that Game 1 Jaylen Brown shot and just like your thought process in the lead up in that sort of 8.5 seconds remaining before the inbound, the shot make by Jaylen, and just kind of where that sits with you in terms of in recent history, like all-time Celtics playoff moments.
Man, so I think you probably felt the same way that I did, the same way that Spoonie did. It's like you almost can't believe they're even in this position. It's like, you know, I think the play on Siakam where they forced the out of bounds was maybe the most surprising part of that whole sequence. You're wondering why Rick Carlisle doesn't take the timeout. And then, you know, he inbounds it. You're thinking, when they blew the whistle, I thought they were going to call an off-ball foul. And I was like, oh, my God, are they in the I'm looking to see if they're in the bonus. I'm doing the scoreboard math. Like, all right, do they have a timeout? So then they get the ball, and I'm thinking, all right, chances are this is going to Jason Tatum. Just for sheer, you know, it just felt like that was his moment at home at the Garden. And then when Drew doesn't pass it in, now I'm counting in my head. I'm like 3, 4. I'm like, just get the ball in. Then he gets it in, and Jaylen doesn't go up initially. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, like now he's not going to either get it off or he's not going to get it off cleanly. Then he gets it off cleanly, and I see the trajectory, and I start doing all this sort of geometry in my math. I'm doing the flight pattern. I'm like, how is this? Is it on target? Then I feel like by the time it got no kidding. Then by the time it got to like the top of the backboard, it felt like it had like a straight drop. And I'm thinking, is that Tommy Heinsohn? Is that Bill Russell? Like, who's messing with the shot? And then as it starts getting close to the rim, it wasn't a close make. It like grazes the back of the rim. So I'm thinking, oh my God, if this is a millimeter to the left, like that's not going in. Then when he makes it, I erupt. I destroy my knuckle on my ceiling fan. I'm like, I'm all fucked up. It like took me a while to realize that he made it. And then I start thinking, oh my God, he left 5 seconds on the clock. This is where Haliburton hits the prayer. So then Tatum's defending him and he gets it off. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to bank in. Like I'm going to die immediately after this drops, and it missed. And I think it was an exhale for all of us. It was an exhale for all of everybody in that arena. And then like they just pulled it out, and then they used that and obviously had the game last night. But in terms of all-time moments, I mean, it's not quite the Derek White putback. I mean, that was to force a Game 7, but I mean, it's up there. You'd have to give me a list. You know, I can't remember too many game winners in Celtics playoff history. Like it beats the Al Harrington, you know, or the Paul Pierce in Al Harrington's face. That wasn't a end of game winner, but like, I don't know. It's easily one of the biggest shots of his career, if not the biggest. And it's up there. I'd probably have it slightly behind the Derek White putback.
That's exactly the holy hand breakdown I was hoping for.
Yes, the holy hand grenade from Jaylen Brown, dude. Like that, he just launched that thing. I thought he got fouled too for a second because
that's the thing. Like Siakam got him down low. So I was at first about to be very mad that he didn't get that foul call, but then I'm like, are we sure he's making all 3 of those? Like, just make the 3, and that's better.
Look, let's talk game 2. We're fortunate enough to be up 2-0 largely because of Jaylen Brown's late game heroics in game 1. Obviously, game 2 last night with game 3 around the corner. Spoonie, let's just talk adjustments. What did you see differently game 2 compared to game 1?
So I think the biggest thing that stood out immediately, and Doris even called this out on the broadcast, is that Al started on Siakam and Jaylen Brown started on Turner. And then I think at some point they switched that up and put Tatum on Turner, which is consistent with what we did against Cleveland, where Tatum was playing Mobley. And, we're obviously doing that so we can switch those Haliburton pick and rolls with Turner, because Siakam is a better player than Miles Turner, but he can't shoot like Turner. So he doesn't stretch the defense as bad, which means you can have Al play drop in a pick and roll that Siakam's setting the pick on, and you just can't do it against that dude. Is shooting like 50% from 3 in the playoffs. It's Miles Turner's having like a super underrated at least offensive playoffs. I think defensively the Celtics have really kind of figured out how to attack this Indiana team. Their half court offensive rating was higher than their total offensive rating on the season in game 2, which is just absolutely nutty. And then on the flip side, I think we did just a really, really good job of not honing in on like, okay, I'm going to get the mismatch with Haliburton, and then I'm going to attack a set defense with all eyes on me. Instead, we were running Haliburton in a bunch of like off-ball stuff, and if we did bring him up to the screen, it was like he already had to run through a screen. He was already off balance. And so I just thought we did a much better job of attacking Haliburton off-ball when he's on defense too, because he's just a really bad defender. So those are like the two big ones for me, but I got a whole list. But Greeny, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think last time we talked, we covered the pick and roll. We talked about how awful it was. And honestly, like a lot of Siakam's jump, like I'm going to live with him taking mid-range jumpers, right? Like sooner or later you have to play the odds. And I thought last night, even though he was nuts, I think he was like 13 of 17 from the floor, I felt like Al was like those were all contested jumpers. So I thought their pre-switching was great. I thought, their communication was better, and they didn't, struggle as much with the roll guy. They just lived with pick and pops from, long twos, which is great. I thought the offensive rebounding was the difference early, honestly. That's what I was curious about game 1. It's such a weakness. Like Turner can't rebound. The Pacers can't rebound. We know the Celtics are streaky as hell. Like using that to your advantage, that's how they were able to keep pace in that first quarter. I think they rebounded almost half of their misses early. I thought that was big. Second, the ball has been moving. 30 assists in game 1, 28 assists last night. Guys are hitting their catch and shoot open threes. We're seeing the Celtics offense that has dominated the league all season. And there's always going to be isolation possessions. There's always going to be hunting mismatches, but can you do everything in moderation, I think is the key, right? Like making sure if all you're running is a simple high screen for Tatum between Tatum and White, and the only play you need to make is just kicking it to an open guy at the top of the arc, beautiful. Like don't force it. Don't try to, do anything extra. Just play smart, take care of the basketball. Their turnovers only had 10 last night. It's like this to me on both ends of the floor was about as flawless as a performance as I think you can get, knowing that you're facing, a historic offense.
Yeah, and defensively against this, historic offense, really impressive. And I got to credit Steven in our Discord for this information here. But like what we're looking at is a screenshot of the Pacers shot type frequency, and you can see like the high percentages of frequency from the long mid range compared to their matchups.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. And like credit to the Celtics defense for funneling them into those shot types. And in game 1, like Siakam did feast a little off those long mid-range. We saw Nembhard, a high percentage shooter from the long mid-range as well, but that's not necessarily sustainable. I think we saw that level out in game 2 as well. So credit the Celtics defense for forcing the Pacers offense to take low percentage shots in this case as well.
Because, what do we always say? You're not going to beat the Celtics making mid-range twos. You're going to meet them by making your threes. So if that graphic, if I looked correctly, like they're basically not taking corner threes. Like those have been eliminated
4 in game 2.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah, like 8th percentile in, or 8% of their shots are corner threes. Like if you're taking away the Pacers' threes in the half court and you're not turning the ball over and all you're giving up is 15 to 18 feet mid-range shots that have been mostly contested. I don't know. I just think the math is going to work in your favor more often than not.
Sure. Yeah. Unless they do get ridiculously bullshit hot from mid-range like they did in game 1.
But even
again,
still,
that's
if you shoot league average from 3, you're going to beat that. You know,
sure.
You're going to beat. It's the Phoenix Suns offense. You can't beat this team shooting 2s.
They've been over 50% from mid-range in both games. Like, you could make an argument this was an anomaly shooting game 2 for the Pacers, and they basically cracked 100 points in garbage time. They shot, I think, 10 of 21 from long mid-range and 44% on above the break threes, which is not, that's a much more difficult 3 than the corner 3, right? So, like, they were super hot shooting, and our defense was just so good. It didn't really matter. We just completely walled off the rim and the corner 3s, and we'll live with that. And ultimately, like, they're going to cool off from long mid-range. Like, they have a lot of good mid-range shooters on that team, but on that type of volume, you just can't sustain it. Even like 48% from the mid-range, right, is incredibly good. From long mid-range is incredibly good. That's a 96 offensive rating. That's dog shit. That's like 10 points worse than the worst offense in the NBA. It's just not a sustainable shot. You need to mix it in the playoffs, certainly, but you can't rely on it as like one of your primary offensive functions. And that's what the Pacers have been like, keeping these games close by being great at that shot. So if that starts to go away, these leads the Celtics are getting are going to balloon really quick.
Yeah, and it's like they have, I think, like a 116 offensive rating this series, which is their lowest in their playoff run. So that sort of answers the question, right? What were the Celtics going to do facing a healthy offense for the first time this playoffs? And what were the Pacers going to do facing a healthy defense? Well, the Celtics have been handling, for the most part, in context, their offense without too much worry. And on the flip side, they had 125 offensive rating. Like, the offense on the Celtics side is producing how I think we all imagine, right? They're putting up 120 plus. They're, shooting 50% last night. They're getting out in transition. I think it's going pretty much how we expected. And now with Haliburton out, I mean, it's just, the type of prayer you need to win a title.
Yeah. What Spoonie was the difference with JB in this one? Because would you say that he altered his approach to how the Pacers defend him, or was he just overall more aggressive?
So I definitely think aggressiveness was a big part of it. Like, he's just gotten so smart, especially like I think the Miami series just kind of like knocked him a little bit off his confidence, and then he's just like slowly been gaining it as the playoffs have gone on. And last night was definitely that might be the best Jaylen Brown game we've ever seen, especially if you
fucking awesome
side.
Easily.
But I felt like we did this against the Warriors in game 3 of the finals that we were at, Ben. He started his attacks like 5 feet beyond the 3-point line, so he could really get ahead of steam, and it spaces the defense out so much that like the help has to come from so far away. That there's like nothing you can do to stop him once he gets that head of steam. And if the help has to come from really far away, 1, he can make that read much easier. And 2, he's just such a bowling ball to the rim now that once he's at like full speed, his deceleration game has really improved too. Like, he takes those weird Euros sometimes, and like he just like he floats in the air. I have absolutely no idea how it's physically possible to do what he does in the air sometimes, but he had multiple finishes where he's just like still in the air as Miles Turner is like landing, and watching Jaylen Brown like Jesus across the water, just floating by him. But I think that was a big thing. Like, our spacing was totally on point, and a big part of that was like Jaylen being willing to just like, I'm going to stay out of the play right now, and you think I'm out of the play, then the ball's going to get swung to me, and all of a sudden I'm downhill so fast, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything Ben listed, right? Like, I think his approach early in games, I think, is significant, right? I think if he can get a wide open catch and shoot 3 that he's feeling good with, he sees that drop, it unlocks something. Now, next thing you know, he's doing what Spoonie's saying. He's getting downhill. He's finishing at the rim. He knows there's no defender on this team that can even bother him. If it's even, how many times have we seen him out of the post just pull his patented mid-range, pull up through a defender? Then he's getting offensive rebound putbacks through energy. Then come the transition dunks. So it's like how he was clearly pissed off heading into this game. I know he denied it. I've watched a lot of Jaylen Brown in my life. I can tell when he's pissed off. But I think it's also should be noted, you mentioned, now that he got away from Miami, I think it's because we've had this inverse run, right? Where he was so good early in these playoff rounds, then he sees Miami late, and the Spoelstra Black Magic gets in his head. Well, now he's gotten over that hump, and now he's looking at dog food for the rest of this playoff path, where it's like there's not going to be any matchup zone. How much more freely on drives, he doesn't look like he's worrying about a random Kyle Lowry swoop in to poke the ball loose. I wouldn't even say his handle has looked all that tight on these drives, but the Pacers just don't have the length and the size outside of Siakam to bother him off the dribble. So now I feel like we're seeing the version of Jaylen that we would see in the earlier rounds before you get to Miami, but now they're not waiting for him. And he's in such a rhythm right now. And then you add it into being pissed off. You add it into him really trying, I feel like, make a point of last year's Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals was not who he is as a player. And I think we're seeing that.
And maybe the more accurate Michael Jordan comp, not Anthony Edwards, but Jaylen Brown. Look at the hang time. Look at the flying motion. He's got the turnaround.
Listen, I can't hate on doing that for Ant. I'm going to reserve judgment. He's Jaylen Brown, and that's plenty good enough.
That's enough for me. Absolutely. Now, Greeny, I got to ask you, we saw O'Shea Brissett small ball to great effect last night. If, from a Joe Mazzulla perspective, if Luke Cornett did not injure his wrist there, does that even happen last night, or was his hand forced?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it was forced, but now that he's seen it, I think he can feel comfortable with it. I can understand being wary of changing rotations when, you won the first game and you're playing well, but there's no denying if you're going to have stretches of a game where nobody's making a shot, then I don't care that O'Shea Brissett can't shoot. His energy alone was enough to turn that game. And I think that's more than enough for him to play in the rest of this series. I know Luke is doubtful for tomorrow, so he'll probably play. But I think the decision there is, and where I think Mazzulla, he doesn't get credit for, putting in someone when Luke got hurt. But where I think he has sort of turned the corner is he didn't go Tillman and he didn't overplay Al Horford, right? Mm-hmm. This could have easily been another 35-minute game for Al with Cornette out. But I think the fact that he was willing to see what it looked like and then credit Brissett for showing why that makes sense in this matchup, there's no reason he shouldn't play another 10 to 15 minutes, if not longer, because you know what? If everyone is going to give the Jays so much attention, I think Brissett's the only player on this team that can cut off ball and then slash and finish at the rim. So it's like, if he's not going to hurt you and the shooting doesn't matter, then he's earned his 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, credit to Joe that, when he saw it worked, he trusted it and went to it for big minutes, right? I mean, that's kind of damning with faint praise in a little bit, but Luke was awesome against Cleveland. I do think there's an argument to, you got to try him in this matchup, give him an honest chance and see what happens, but yeah, I agree with you, Greeny. There's no fucking way Joe was going to the small ball lineup if Luke doesn't get
No, I mean, we wouldn't have seen that. If you're not going to see it in the blowout wins that we had, he just is averse to it for now. And while it's surprising that he didn't go Tillman, at the same time, this game didn't need a big bruiser. It needed chaos and energy and revenge, and that's what Brissett brought.
I don't think I've ever seen that glaring a situation where everyone outside of the Celtics universe is calling for it, play small, play either Tillman or Brissett instead of Luke. It's not happening, and then their coach's hand is forced by an injury, and thank you to Luke Cornett for his sacrifice there. And then it happens, and immediately, it's so clearly there's value to it, it works. And it's we've all been calling for it. You had to have heard that noise somewhere. You didn't do it. You were forced, and then it worked. I don't know. I've just never seen it go down that way before. It was just a little concerning, but I love Joe Mazzulla, so I'm not going to unpack that any further.
But I do think we have to be careful because Tatum at the 5 had issues. Like, there wasn't like some overbearing, well-oiled machine. And maybe that was due to reps, but like it was shaky at times with him at the 5. The rebounding was non-existent. And that will always concern me in a playoff game. If you aren't able to finish your defensive possessions cleanly and you're giving an elite team 2 to 3 times per possession, that might be all they need to catch a rhythm. So it's like, yes, the energy part was great for Brissett, but you also have to make sure you're collectively rebounding. You can't just hope that Tatum turns into, Bill Russell and you just don't have, a concern on the glass.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, finishing up the game 2 talk, Spoonie, what was up with Tatum last night? Obviously, he kind of figured it out to some degree going into the third quarter, but pretty concerning. We did see him play like some of those Tatum at the 5 reps with O'Shea at the 4, and first half getting blown by defensively, similar to game 2 against the Cavs, where you're like, what is going on? We know that this guy's an elite defender, basically 1 through 5 or 1 through 4.5, and yet rough first half for Tatum, still couldn't find the 3 ball in the second half. Are you concerned? Like, what do you think's happening there?
This is just who Jason Tatum is at this point, right? Like, it makes no sense that he wasn't even getting down in a defensive stance in the first half. Like, I don't know if he just thought these guys they can't stop us, so they'll go away. Like, this won't be a big deal. As Andrew Nembhard hits another step back, or like Neesmith hits a pull up midi. I don't know. It was really bizarre because he looked so obviously checked out for that entire first half. But then I thought he was great about midway through the third quarter until the game was put away, in the fourth quarter. Like, he was awesome defensively in the second half. Awesome. Good on the boards and just switching like a maniac. Nobody got by him in the second half. So I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. I think that's just part of his DNA a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it's weird. It was like the defense of the Cavs game 2 and the offense of the Sixers game 5 or game 6, whatever that was last year, where it's like there have been earlier games in this run where he hasn't shot the ball and has still been impactful. This was honestly the first game of the season I can honestly remember and say, he's floating. He's not impactful. He's going through the motions. Like, that shit we saw age 22-year-old Tatum do, age 21-year-old Tatum. But to his credit, in Jason Tatum fashion, when you needed him, he showed up. This was not a blowout at halftime. This was not a blowout through the first 11 minutes of the third quarter. He led the whole team in second half points, 19 points, led them in rebounds, was tied for assists. He found a way to eventually show up. The problem, I don't know if it's problem is the right word, but the annoying part of it is we know you're this good. So just pick something. If you're not going to make your shots, okay, cool. I've seen you miss shots before, but I've also seen you play all NBA level defense. I've seen you rebound. He had 2 rebounds in the first half. And I have always believed the easiest way to tell if Tatum is locked in is you just look at his rebounding. He found a way to, did he finish with 10 last night? I think so, or close to it. No?
He had 6, I think.
Okay, so even still, that matches the eye test. All you have, he's had 3 games this postseason. He hasn't had double-digit rebounds. That's always the barometer for me. So I don't know, maybe he woke up late. It's very weird when it happens, but I've watched it long enough to trust that when they need him, I know he will show up.
Anything else on game 2, Spoonie, before we take a quick ad break here and get on to game 3?
Real quick, Ben, I want you to start because you're the chief anxiety officer of the podcast. Hallie probably out. Which non-Siakam Pacer are you most afraid of after these first 2 games?
Can I give you 2?
It's Nembhard, dude. I just don't think Nembhard's ever going to miss. He's so good. Wasn't he a second-round pick? What a player. I think his confidence, he's taken that leap to now where I'm just convinced he's never going to miss. It could be a 3 from the wing, from the mid-range. I know he can't really defend, but he's going to be the guy that I think in Haliburton's absence is going to be that pest.
Yeah, I was going to say Nembhard as well. Maybe Miles Turner, who got in foul trouble in this game, in game 2, and saw less minutes as a result, and maybe struggled a little bit against the small ball there from the Celtics perspective. But he's just, he sets good screens. He pops out to beyond the arc, and he's like you said, he's shooting like 55% from 3 in this series. And as part of such a prolific offense as the Pacers have, a big who can pop out and shoot at that kind of a clip, I think is just like a mid to high level threat at all times at worst. And with Hallie out potentially, and we'll get to that, they're going to be looking for other options, and spamming deep threes from Miles Turner if he's hot is not necessarily a terrible option. So I think Nembhard would be my number one. I'm fucking scared of this guy with Hallie out candidate, but Turner, he's there, because we have struggled to get out and contest. Pritchard, for example, actually had a really good sort of hustle-based contest out to Miles Turner last night. Miles Turner did not see him in his peripheral vision and just like drain the three.
That was bizarre. That was one of those that Peyton had missed that. That's like, all right, it just wasn't meant to be. Like that,
yeah.
Like all three of us could have made that corner three. I feel like,
can't shoot threes.
Yeah, I would not have hit rim. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about Game 3.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. March is over, but the biggest moments of college basketball tip off in the month of April. Be a part of the action on Prize Picks for both men's and women's college basketball. And get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks, as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can even make the play-in rounds seem interesting, since we all know the Celtics won't be there. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. Personally, I'm looking at Derek White more on points because they are criminally low, and we all know Derek White is going to come up big in the postseason. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100.
All right, Game 3. So, Greeny, one thing that I have personally become known for is finding a narrative for every game being a must-win in a playoff series, regardless of how the series is going.
Listen, I'm ready to support your agenda. Great. All right, let's do it.
This is why we have you on. So, what's the narrative for Game 3 being a must-win? Because I have to even admit that I'm faltering here, where we feel like we've got well and truly the advantage in this series, and you really only need to win one of these games, go back home and wrap it up in 5. What's your approach, sort of as one of the anxious fans, to Game 3?
It starts with the one thing we all know is that Al Horford is best when he gets rest, right?
Sure.
So you want to give him rest. You win Game 3 to essentially guarantee you're going to end this series in 5 games, in my opinion. You do that, and I'm giving them the credit of taking one at home. I respect. Listen, I've been big on respecting the opponent, respecting the basketball gods. So say they get one and you end it in 5. The series, they then have from May 30th to June 6th off. That gives Al his second mini All-Star break of the playoffs. It gives you Porzingis another 7 days before the finals. After years and years and years of being burned out, the deeper that they get, I think all of them need to realize this is their golden opportunity to give their most important pieces, because the open kick out 3 is vital to this offense and will be vital if they have to play Minnesota and if they have to play Dallas. You need that shot to be consistent to open everything up offensively. I think heading into Game 3, that's the game you want to, you have the momentum. They're going to be super desperate. This is when, if you want to deliver the kill shot, you win Game 3. If you lose Game 3, they're going to start feeling better about themselves in Game 4. The crowd will be energized. You give them the opportunity for life. You are so fucking close to the finals and to the title. This is it. This is what the entire season has built up for. You didn't play with your food in Game 2. You win Game 3. You stamp your ticket to the finals, and you give yourself the best chance to win the whole thing.
It's the transitive properties of must wins, right? Like if you lose game 3, game 4 becomes a must win. Thus, game 3 must be a must win.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I like that too. See, I'm not smart, but that's better. I like that theory.
So what do you think the approach is going to be strategically, Spoonie, for game 3? I suppose we need to look at this through the Pacers lens and how they're going to adjust to some of the changes the Celtics made. So how do you think that's going to go down?
Yeah, so we talked about the lack of corner threes for the Pacers. I don't know if I have a really good strategic adjustment for them, but they only took 4 in game 2, and they just need to figure out a way to generate those. I wonder if you can generate a lot of good corner threes, like if you drive baseline and then you hit those hammer screens to open up the corner. And McConnell drives baseline more than any player in the NBA on a per minute basis, but he's just seeing nothing every time he drives baseline. He's just gnashing into gnashing. He's we might as well have a mullet at this point. He's got so much Steve Nashing going on. And you just got to generate open looks when your guy gets that deep in dribble penetration. Part of it's we just don't respect him to finish over length at all, and we're refusing to come off the corners. But I just feel like they're not punishing our help never leaving the corner. Which is why the mid-range is so open, because the help's not coming. But I just think they got to figure something out to get the corner threes. So that's pretty shitty analysis on my behalf. Maybe some hammer screens when McConnell is driving baseline, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just think you're going to see the Heat theory or the Heat approach, the Cavs approach when they got desperate. It's time to spam threes. However you can get them in transition. And that's what I think the Celtics have to be ready for. No more. I don't even want them baiting TJ McConnell into shooting these wide open threes, because you make a couple of those at home. Now you've started the tidal wave. So I think they have to take that away, maybe even oversell it, just because with no Haliburton, that's going to be, you're going to probably get a lot of pick and pop with Turner, as you mentioned, especially if the Celtics are going small. You just have to be ready for it. It's desperation time for them. If you turn the ball over, I don't think they're going to be going for transition layups like Siakam has been doing. I think those are now transition threes, and that's really their only chance. And if you're not ready for it, that's how you have a competitive game where now you can let Siakam go to work in the fourth quarter, like in game 1. You have to find ways to avoid those traps. And we've seen them get caught by, random 50% 3-point shooting games before. Well, Now you're dealing with an offense where it wouldn't be a prayer if the Pacers hit 23s. Haliburton makes a lot, but everybody on their roster makes a lot. So you have to take that away.
Yeah, play the variance game and hope it works out in your favor from the Pacers' perspective. I think defensively, with Hallie potentially out, they have a better defensive lineup on the court, and that's one less person that we can frequently target. And I don't know. I think that's probably a wash, because offensively, obviously Haliburton he's so productive for them, and he opens up those driving lanes and collapses the defense, and he is basically the sole reason why they are such an effective offense. But defensively, I think they'll hold up a lot stronger with Haliburton out. Although TJ McConnell is someone that you can target as well, so maybe that's a moot point as I say it out loud.
Well, do you guys know what their offensive rating was during when he missed all those games? Were they still around in the high teens, low 120s? Because I'd be curious. I'll probably do this waiting for tomorrow night, but I'd love to see how they played. Was the pace slower? Did they run more pick and roll? There is tape on how they survived without Haliburton. So my hope is that someone on Joe's staff has been pulling all that footage for the last 2 days, because there's a blueprint there to how they're going to play, without him.
Yeah, so that's a good question.
I can give you the on-offs for the playoffs so far. Their offense drops by about 7 points per 100 possessions when Haliburton's off. Obviously, that's not an exact comparison, just because you're going to play a little differently when a guy is completely out of the lineup than when he's just kind of off the court in a game. But yeah, I think to Ben's point, he's super important for them. I don't know, Greeny, but they were pretty shitty when he wasn't playing.
That's what I'm trying to think. If they were, it may not even matter what they do if they can't, because he's such an offensive engine. But I'd be curious. I'm going to guess, and I'll probably look at it and tweet it out, but I'm going to guess it probably hovered around 113, 114 as a rating.
The other thing is defensively, I think that they can handle our small ball lineup better. They were guarding O'Shea last night like he was the O'Shea who dropped a bunch of threes on the Celtics when he was a pacer, and like he's just not a reliable 3-point shooter.
No, that'll be corrected. That'll be
corrected. And they were sagging off Luke and packing the paint, which just made the whole Luke Cornett thing so much worse because he was already pretty poor defensively, and he kind of tanked our offense because of that as well. And I'd expect them to have the same sort of coverage on O'Shea and this one moving forward. And this is why we can afford him, really, because if he could shoot threes, we would not be able to afford O'Shea on a minimum deal.
He's not what was he, a minimum or something like that, or a minimum? Yeah, you're not getting. He would be Jaylen Brown if he could shoot. You know what I
mean? Like, Gary Harris, maybe who makes about $15 million a year. But one big thing, Greeny, and I think it goes to the 3-point variance you both were talking about, is only 12% of Indy's possessions in this series are in transition, which is insanely low for them. And I think this is a big credit to Joe's coaching, because you have to be so disciplined and so drilled to get back every single time against this Indy team, because they just hit you so quick. I mean, even if you make a shot, they're up the court immediately. And they've turned down some of these like half open transition threes. And I expect those will not be turned down in Game 3. But I mean, are there any other ways? Maybe this is to Ben's point too, is like if they're playing better defense without Haliburton, then you're getting more misses, and then you're out in transition a little bit more too. So that's one thing I will see is like they're going to really push
turnovers, right? Like they had 10 last night. The backcourt between Holiday and White, I think, only had one. Holiday didn't have any. If you're not turning, it's similar to how I feel like in the Heat Eastern Conference Finals, those games were tough, and their losses always came with 15 or more turnovers and between 17 and 20 points off turnovers. Well, if you're not giving the Pacers free run to play in transition because you have a whole bunch of live ball turnovers, you are subtracting a major part of their offense. And now you subtract their best half-court initiator. Like, they really need to depend on those turnovers. So I just feel if you can just hold on to the ball and be normal and don't be careless or stupid with it, they're going to struggle to break 100 points. Based on the nature of how they play, it's just a math game. It's just a possession game. If they're not going to be getting you, I think, what did they have in the first game? It was like 14 turnovers, and I bet you it was close to 16 or 18 points off turnovers, and it was a close game. That's the Celtics' kryptonite in every playoff series. Just don't be stupid and give the ball to the other team, and you're fine.
Dude, we're 2 wins away from going back to the finals, and we've just laid out how the Celtics could easily win the next 2 games. I'm getting pretty fucking excited here. We're going to run.
Please take a second.
It's happening.
Yes, knock on wood. Yeah, again, we always consult the shamans, the anti-curse shamans, and do everything necessary to avoid jinxes. So we're doing what we can here, folks. We're going to get to a quick ad break and then finish up talking about some injury news.
The NBA playoffs have been awesome so far, so it's hard to not think about trying to get to a couple of games. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down closer to tip-off, which makes it great for last-minute decisions to maybe fly to Boston for the NBA Finals. My dad is literally on the way to Boston from Sydney right now for Game 1 of the second round, and he used GameTime to get his tickets. GameTime has awesome features like seat views. You get a sweet panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You get a lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, we're going to wrap up on a couple of injury news items, and then we're going to get out of here because Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals has started, and I really want to watch it. But first of all, if you're watching here live on YouTube, please subscribe. Please hit that like button. Please help put us in favor of the algorithm and put this show in front of more people. The bigger audience we get, the more possibility we can maybe one day get a player or something like that on the show as a guest. So hit that like button, subscribe, help spread the word. Now, injury news. The update on the Tyrese Haliburton injury is pretty vague. He's questionable. heading into tomorrow night. It's apparently Shams was saying this on some show. I've just grabbed this off Twitter. It's a re-aggravation of the soft issue hamstring injury. So as Spoonie's cat makes an appearance again for your bingo card. So kind of vague as to how that might impact him throughout the duration of this series. Obviously, he's been hamstrung by that hamstring injury all season.
Boo.
I'm sorry. I'm a dad. I get to make dad jokes. So I think either way, he's going to be out or he's going to be like pretty limited by that. And it seemed like it was quite limited throughout the game yesterday. I think we could probably just leave it there unless you guys have any thoughts on that. We've already kind of talked about what that might look like without Haliburton on the court.
Yeah, I don't buy the questionable tag. I mean, we all saw what OG looked like in their game 7. If it's a re-aggravation of something he already hurt, he's cooked, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Am I crazy? They'd be fucking sane to play him down 0-2, and risk potentially hurting their franchise player. That would be the dumbest decision. Like Sixers with Embiid style stupid decision, in my opinion.
I think you'd see more of the Donovan Mitchell approach, where maybe you could come back, but you're about to get this extension. You're probably not going to win the series. Good job, good effort.
Yeah. Yep. Great season, buddy.
Yeah, and we don't like to see anyone injured, but personally, I'm very okay with that. I just want to win this fucking title, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not apologizing for shit. You can kiss my ass. I don't care.
Easiest road, baby.
For me,
there we go. Yeah.
All 37 years of my life, when every player got hurt, no one cried for me. I'm not crying for them.
Yeah, that's right.
Chris Stapps is hurt. Nobody mentions that shit.
Yeah. Well, great segue. So on the Celtics side of things, Luke Kornet questionable with the wrist. I think hopefully, given the revelation of how good O'Shea small ball looks, we wouldn't see much of Kornet anyway. And then the other thing is the Kristaps Porzingis Game 4 return report from Woj a few days ago. Did you notice this, Greenie? It kind of got walked back on the broadcast yesterday, where they were talking about interviewing Joe, and he was like, "I don't know what that shit is. I haven't heard a timeline. I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. I know nothing." So what does that mean to you?
It's tough because in my heart, I want to believe Woj. He's Woj. He gets all the inside. This is also the same Woj that told me Al Horford wasn't coming here in free agency when he was on Atlanta. So I just think his Celtics connection is not as rock solid. I mean, he's missed more than a handful of times. The fact that, I don't know, maybe this is just PTSD of being lied to my entire life over the health status of a major Celtics big man. I'm still waiting on KG's knee bruise to be perfectly okay. Like, what happened there? I'm nervous that he's not practicing, but then at some point there needs to be a ramp up period. So if he hasn't practiced at all, I can't imagine he's coming back in game 4.
Yeah.
If they go up 3-0, I feel like they're going to say, hey, if you're going to get hurt again, it's going to be in the NBA Finals. We're not going to get you hurt right before we get to the NBA Finals. But then I start thinking, what's he going to look like completely cold after not playing for a month? That's terrifying. Also, even if he's healthy, the guy there's a big difference between practice shape and game shape. So I just don't know. Part of me is the pessimist in me is we're not going to see him at all the rest of the year. The optimist is they know he's okay. They just are dominating every series, and they don't need to rush him back.
Yeah, if you think that Al Horford is being targeted, wait till you see an unfit, unconditioned KP come back. And the notion of bringing him back in Game 4 to ramp him up, only for him to then have a week off before the finals start again, seems kind of useless to me. So I'd be surprised to see him in this series.
But yet I don't want them to lose these games so the series goes longer. I just think you have to get through as quick as you can and then just hope for the best.
The good thing is Porzingis very used to coming back from injury, which is, I guess, a plus side of him constantly being hurt. I don't trust a word Joe Mazzulla says to the media, by the way. He knows. He knows exactly where KP is in his recovery, but he's just Mazzulla-ing things. What? Why would they tell the head coach who interacts with that guy every single day? Me? Little old me? No, they would never tell me that. So I don't trust Joe. He definitely knows. I think if this were a Game 7 tomorrow night, he would play in it. That's where I think he's at with his recovery, but there's no need for us to, one, get anybody's hopes up, and two, tip our hand on how healthy he is. So I anticipate Game 1 of the finals he'll be playing, and I think he'll be just fine.
Do you put any stock in, though, this is how KD popped his Achilles. He started cold, didn't have a ramp-up period.
Come on, Greeny.
Boom.
Come on, dog.
I can't help but be nervous about it. I'm like, Ben, this is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I haven't slept in weeks.
Yeah, man. Like, I just don't know. I need to see it before I can feel comfortable.
Let's start him back next season. Fuck it. See how the finals
Well, we'll
go.
see. Yeah, it's low-key like the most important thing going on in the land of the Celtics at the moment. So obviously keeping a close eye on that. Look, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. Please like and subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review on the audio pod, and check out all our links in the description. We'll be here live on YouTube immediately after Game 3 tomorrow night. So we'll catch you then. Greeny, this was fun, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Listen, if they keep winning, I'm forcing my way onto this podcast. And
Great.
Anytime, dude.
That is a guarantee. This is too important. We're 6 wins away. All hands on deck.
I know, but we've got something cooking here. Something's working. All right, you can find all the Greeny stuff over on barstoolsports.com or over on Twitter at StoolGreeny. Those links are in the description as well. Wayne Spooney, love your work, man. Until next time, go Celtic.
I love